So, this is another Meth Monday, and I guess I'm supposed to explain how meth has affected me. Short story, meth has ripped my family apart and robbed me of a lot of dreams I had for my son. Never thought that I would have to deal with this. I'm a teacher, and I made sure my kids were in church youth group, Cub Scouts. They're involved in sports and activities, and I wasn't prepared. When my son entered high school, he started having issues with depression and anxiety, and started dabbling in drugs to self-medicate, unfortunately. The medications that we tried for his mental health just weren't doing enough to help him cope. And he sunk deeper into depression and started with suicide ideation. By the time he was 17, he had tried to kill himself over a dozen times. At that point, somebody said to him, "I have something that'll help." And as my son explained, when every time you wake up in the morning, you wake up into a nightmare that is your life, he was looking for anything that would help, and he tried meth. And he said it was the only thing that actually felt good, and he was hooked. So from 17 until he was 26, he unfortunately gave into the addiction of meth and was in jail more than he was out. My son was the kind of person who stops on the side of the road and will help somebody change a flat tire and holds doors open for people, when he's leaving somewhere. Was a great athlete and had great friends until he didn't. He tried rehab quite a few times, and it'd go well while he was in rehab, and then he'd get out, and the addiction would suck him right back in and turn him into this person I didn't know. My son is one of my favorite people to talk to. I love talking to him when he is sober, but when he is not sober, I am scared of him. He became a person who chased me through the house with a butcher knife. I started to sleep with my purse so that I could get out if I needed to. And it became normal, and that's not right. And you'll talk to a lot of people who don't realize that when addiction hits their family, things that others realize aren't normal, you normalize. It's taken a lot for me to realize that and to start to heal from that. Right now, my son is in prison and he's facing 10 years in prison, and I'm okay with that because if he wasn't there, he and I both agree he'd be dead by now. He had some stints of sobriety in the last 10 years. The longest one was 2.5 years. And when he was able to maintain sobriety, he got his college degree and excelled at college. He became like the president of the club for the college program he was in, traveled around winning competitions, again, had a group of friends that I absolutely loved. And when college ended, so did his sobriety. I think when a lot of structure ends for people who have addiction, they struggle and the addiction takes over again. I am hoping now, with him being in prison for 10 years, that he can finally learn the skills to cope with addiction and his brain can heal, because science will tell you it takes 5 years of not using meth for your brain to fully return to what it was. The worst part is just watching this kid who I had all these hopes and dreams for and all these plans for, and he had all these plans, and just watching that go down the drain, so to speak. I've learned that I had to grieve that, and that I need to develop new hopes and dreams for him, and he needs to develop those for himself. He'll get out in 10 years, and I hope that he'll still have a great life. Probably my lowest point in this journey, other than his suicide attempts, was right before he went to prison this time. He'd only been in county jails before that, but we were at a place in his life where I knew he was using, but he wouldn't admit. And I just said, I want to meet weekly for dinners because I need to know that you're still alive. Once a week, I need to be able to know that you're still alive and to look at you. And it was right about that point that he looked at me at one of the weekly dinners and said, what would you do if I just disappeared? He was thinking that he was too far in, and either he would die or he might get killed. It was right after that he failed to show up for one of our weekly dinners, and I went to his house to try and find him, and the DEA was there. And over the years, I've gotten to know the Wisconsin Drug Task Force. You know, I've seen them, unfortunately, a few times in dealing with my son. And I asked what he had done, and some of you might remember this, but they said he had been handcuffed in the back of a squad car, and he'd been able to move the handcuffs to the front and got out of the squad car and stole the squad car. And the reason for that is when they pulled him over, they'd been following him, and he was found with $40,000 worth of meth. Again, he is not his addiction. When he is sober, he wouldn't make these choices. But when the meth has a hold of him, he makes choices that I just can't understand and I can't condone. I've had to call the police on him. I've turned him in. I've done everything I could for him. Now I'm hoping he can do for himself. One of the things that I've been able to do for myself is realize that I needed to heal. I needed education. I needed to figure out how to deal with this. And I've become very active in support groups in our community. There's some great online support groups, and with some other people who are dealing with addiction in their families. I started a local Nar-Anon group, which is similar to Al-Anon. It's for families of addicts or friends who have somebody they love with addiction. And so I'm trying to take what I've learned from this, knowing I have to heal, but also trying to help others. I never thought this would be my life. And I hope that we can get a hold of this, because this isn't a life I would choose for anyone. I guess that's all I have, but if anybody needs to know more about Nar-Anon or just needs to know more about how meth affects families or people in this area, I strongly suggest you to reach out to somebody. You are not alone. That is the main thing. You feel so alone when you're going through this with a family member, but you are not alone. And just connect with people. It's important.